November 13th, 1943. USS Essex, Philippine Sea. 03:47 hours. An aviation machinist's mate second class named James Swett is watching yet another F6F Hellcat tumble off the carrier's deck right into the dark waters of the Pacific. That's the third pilot they've lost this week alone. Not because of Japanese Zeros in the sky, not from enemy anti-aircraft guns. No, it's their own fuel tanks bursting into flames during those tricky night landings on the carrier. The numbers are just devastating. Ever since October, Task Force 38 has seen 47 Hellcat pilots perish in these fuel vapor blasts while trying to recover on the carriers. Those self-sealing fuel tanks, built to protect pilots from enemy bullets, are turning against them and causing these deaths instead. Every single rough landing, every time that arresting hook snags and yanks the plane to a stop, it sends a powerful jolt right through the entire fuel setup. The vapors catch fire in an instant. The cockpit turns into a raging fire pit before the pilot even has a chance to unbuckle and get out. Admiral Mark Mitcher has put a complete halt to all operations after dark. Without the ability to launch night fighters, the whole carrier group is essentially defenseless once the sun goes down. Japanese planes carrying torpedoes are taking full advantage of this weak spot. Just last week, the USS Independence got hit by 2 torpedoes in a raid right at midnight. 73 sailors lost their lives that night. The ship limped all the way back to Pearl Harbor, barely making it. The Navy's Bureau of Aeronautics has been tackling this issue for a full 8 months now. Their fix involves beefing up the brackets that hold the tanks in place, adding springs to cushion the impacts, and tweaking the pressure release on the filler caps. But none of it is making a difference. Pilots are still dying, one after another. The fuel tanks keep detonating no matter what they try. What the top brass doesn't realize, what no one has figured out yet, is that a 24-year-old mechanic hailing from Turut, Indiana, has been running his own secret tests down in Hangar Bay 3. James Swett didn't even finish high school. He lacks any engineering credentials or proper schooling in designing fuel systems. He's not meant to be coming up with answers like this. His job is to follow commands, tighten bolts, and stay out of the way. But Swett has been paying close attention to the probes into these crashes. He's been examining the scorch marks carefully, and he spotted something that slipped past all the experts. Something so straightforward, so basic, that when he finally lays it out for the higher-ups, they'll suspect him of tampering on purpose. They'll warn him about facing a court-martial. They'll point out how his concept breaks 3 different Navy rules and could land him 20 years behind bars in Leavenworth. In just 3 hours from now, Swett is about to sneak an F6F Hellcat right off the flight deck. He's planning to take it up for a test flight without any approval, smack in the middle of an active war zone, and he's going to demonstrate that the Navy's entire understanding of fuel tank protection is completely off base. The F6F Hellcat came into use back in January of 1943, promising something groundbreaking. It was set to be the first fighter based on carriers that could take hits in battle and still get pilots back safely. The key feature was that self-sealing fuel tank. If a bullet pierced it, a unique rubber layer would close up the hole on its own. The Japanese Zero fighters had nothing like that for defense. A quick spray from a Hellcat's machine guns could set a Zero ablaze in seconds. American flyers could survive injuries that would doom their opponents. By the summer of 1943, the Hellcat was ruling the skies over the Pacific. The ratios of kills were hitting 19-1. Pilots adored this plane. It was speedy, packed with firepower, and almost unbeatable in close aerial combats. The Navy put in orders for 5,000 additional ones. Then the missions after dark kicked off. Landing on a carrier has always been a high-risk game. Pilots describe it as a managed collision. smashing a 20,000-pound machine onto a rolling deck at 90 knots, praying that the wire grabs your hook at the tail. In the light of day, pilots can spot the officers signaling for landing, gauge their descent path, and compensate for how the carrier is shifting. But at night, they're coming in without sight, relying solely on a handful of faint glows and voices over the radio. The very first blast from a fuel tank happened on October 3, 1943. Lieutenant Robert Anderson pulled off what looked like a flawless landing at night on the USS Lexington. His hook snagged the number 3 wire. That abrupt slowdown created a surge through his fuel tanks. The vapors lit up. Anderson was gone before the firefighters could even get to him. The Navy pinned it on the pilot's mistake. They said Anderson must have approached too quickly or hit too forcefully. So they instructed everyone to ease in more gently. Then, on October 14, 1943, Ensign Charles Murphy met the same fate in an exact repeat on the USS Bunker Hill. Murphy's entry was spot on. His speed matched the guidelines perfectly. October 22nd, Lieutenant James Fleming on the USS Enterprise. Same kind of blast, same tragic end. October 29th, 2 pilots gone in a single night. One on the USS Essex and another on the USS Yorktown. The Bureau of Aeronautics pulls together an urgent review team. Their specialists pinpoint the cause. The stop from the arresting wire generates a kind of hydraulic slam inside the tanks. The fuel rushes ahead, then bounces back. This builds a massive pressure burst that splits the self-sealing rubber inside. Vapors from the fuel leak into the open area of the tank. The tiniest spark, from built-up static, from parts scraping metal, or from the wiring, sets it off. The Bureau's approach makes sense on paper. Strengthen it all. Put in tougher brackets for mounting to stop any shifting of the tanks. Add those cushioning springs to soak up the jolts. Adjust the valves for relief to let out vapors quicker. They update 200 planes with this new setup. November 6, 1943. The initial plane with these changes blows up on landing. Lieutenant Richard Best is killed right away. The admirals are in a panic. Admiral Mitcher shuts down all fighter ops at night for good. Without protection in the dark, the carriers are sitting ducks. Japanese subs have already taken out 2 destroyers. Bombers with torpedoes strike without fear once it's dark. Reports from intelligence say the Japanese are gathering their subs for a big nighttime push against the carriers. The leading experts in fuel systems for the Navy, guys with diplomas from places like MIT and Caltech, are at a loss. They've thrown everything at it. Tougher tanks, improved venting, better shock handling. Zip. The general agreement is that self-sealing tanks and carrier work at night just don't mix. The Navy might have to pick one and drop the other. Down in Hangar Bay 3 on the USS Essex, aviation machinist's mate second class James Swett isn't buying it. He's been following the inquiries. He's been poring over the debris, and he believes the focus is all wrong. James Swett spent his childhood repairing farm tractors back on his family's place in Indiana amid the Great Depression. He left school at 16 after his dad passed away, stepping up to care for his mom and 3 little sisters. He got work at an auto shop in Terre Haute, earning a reputation as the young guy who could mend just about anything. When the attack on Pearl Harbor hit, Swett signed up the very next day. The Navy turned him down for pilot training. No diploma meant no shot at being an officer. They assigned him as a mechanic. Swett took it in stride. He thrived on tinkering with planes. The F6F Hellcat was the most intricate device he'd ever handled. 9 cylinders, 2,000 horsepower, systems for hydraulics, electrics, armaments. He dove into every guidebook available. He signed up for all the classes he could. In 6 months, he could take apart and put back together a Hellcat engine with his eyes shut. But Swett went beyond just fixing. He observed failures closely. While others saw a busted component, Swett spotted trends. When the pros suggested fixes, he ran mental simulations based on what he'd seen firsthand. On the night of November 12, 1943, Swett gets put on duty for investigating a crash. Lieutenant William Edwards has just perished in yet another tank explosion. Swett looks over the remains in the hangar. The tanks are split open just like the rest. The brackets, upgraded with the Navy's latest tweaks, hold firm. The springs for damping are fine. The valves for pressure worked as they should. Swett gazes at the charred tanks for 3 hours straight. Then it hits him. The blast started up at the top of the tank, not down below. The fire marks indicate the flames moved downward. But fuel weighs more than air. It collects at the base. If that hydraulic slam was tossing liquid fuel around and making vapors, the fire ought to begin low where fuel and air blend. Unless the real issue isn't with the fuel itself. Swett takes a light and squeezes into the wreck. He checks inside the tank. The rubber seal at the bottom is whole, but up top by the cap for filling, the rubber is ripped to shreds. Not scorched, mechanically shredded before any fire took hold. Swett gets it. The experts are chasing the wrong fix. That hydraulic slam isn't producing risky vapors by sloshing the liquid around. It's pulling a vacuum. When the plane jerks to a halt, fuel rushes forward, creating an empty spot at the rear of the tank. Nature hates empty spaces. Air floods in via the filler cap to balance it, but the flexible self-sealing rubber gets yanked in by that suction. It rips, and the tearing generates static charge. That zap lights up the vapors always lingering in a tank that's not full. The Navy's reinforcements actually worsen it. Sturdier tanks lead to fiercer vacuums. Improved valves vent faster. Pulling even stronger sucks. Swett sees the solution, but no one's going to hear out a mechanic without even a high school certificate. November 13th, 1943, Hangar Bay 3. Swett lies awake. He can't shake the image of Lieutenant Edwards trapped in flames. He mulls over the fix. It's so basic, so clear. Pack the empty parts of the fuel tank with material that stops vacuums from forming. Something neutral that doesn't catch fire. Something that swells and shrinks with how much fuel is there. Foam rubber. Line the tank's inside with open cell foam rubber, and it'll absorb fuel like a sponge when full. As fuel gets used up in flight, the foam lets it out slowly. But crucially, the foam occupies the void. No void equals no vacuum. No vacuum equals no ripping of the seal. No rip equals no static zap. The foam might add about 5 pounds to each tank. It won't hurt how the plane flies. No big changes to the structure needed. You could add it in 60 minutes. Swett tracks down Chief Petty Officer Michael Torres in the shop for maintenance. Torres has been in naval aviation for 15 years. He relies on Swett's gut feelings. Chief, I've got to have some foam rubber, around 6 cubic feet, and access to a Hellcat's fuel lines. Torres eyes him.
What's this for?
I figured out the tank explosions and how to stop them. The Bureau of Aeronautics has 50 engineers on it. They're barking up the wrong tree. Torres ponders. He's witnessed Swett crack tough nuts before. Lay it out for me. They labor all night in a quiet spot of the hangar. Swett breaks down the vacuum idea. He points out the fire trails from the probes. He shows it with a pail of water and a rubber cover. How suction shreds the material. Torres buys in. We've got to try this. I need a Hellcat for a full-speed stop like on landing. No way. We can't grab a plane without clearance. So who do we ask? The air boss, the captain? They'd dismiss us outright. You're just a machinist's mate, second class, not even trained as an engineer. Swett knows Torres has a point. The Navy runs on strict ranks. Ideas come from above, not below. An enlisted guy doesn't dictate fuel designs to admirals. What if we go ahead anyway? Swett whispers. Go ahead with what? Snag a Hellcat tonight. Put in the foam. Do a test stop. If it succeeds, we have evidence. If not, I'll face the music. Torres gapes. That's flat out against the law. Stealing government property. 20 years in Leavenworth, maybe even worse. How many more flyers die waiting for approval? Torres recalls Lieutenant Edwards. The 73 lost on the Independence. The enemy subs lurking around the carriers, biding time till night. I'll fetch the foam, Torres decides. You prep the Hellcat. Test at first light. November 13th, 1943. Swett and Torres hustle in the dim hours before dawn. They've picked Hellcat number 42, a backup not on the schedule for morning flights. They use foam from ship mattresses, sliced into pieces and doused in flame blocker, to pad both fuel tanks inside. The job takes 40 minutes. No chance for checks on the ground, no time for math. They seal the panels just as morning prep starts. I'll take her up, Torres offers. No, my plan, my risk. You aren't rated to fly. I've logged 30 hours riding shotgun. I can bring her down. Torres sees the madness, but time's up. Keep it brief. One stop, then we report to the captain. Swett settles into the pilot's seat. The deck team is gearing up for day ops. Amid the shuffle of planes, one extra Hellcat rolling to the launch spot goes unnoticed. Swett's pulse races. He's never taken off from a carrier, never sat down on one. He's about to try the riskiest move in Navy flying with a fuel tweak no one approved. The officer for catapult signals him ahead. Swett moves to position. The crew attaches the restraint. Swett recalls the steps. Flaps lowered, fuel mix rich, prop maxed, canopy secure. The catapult launches. The force pins Swett back. 3 seconds on, he's up, pulling away from the Essex at 200 knots. For 10 minutes, Swett loops around the carriers. He uses up fuel, dropping tanks to half, matching the levels that triggered blasts. His grip trembles. He's broken half a dozen rules worthy of trial in the past hour. If this flops, his time in the Navy ends. He sets up for the approach. The signal officer directs him. Swett eases power, deploys flaps, tweaks his path. The deck looms. Wheels hit hard. Hook grabs number 2 wire. From 90 to 0 in 2 seconds. Swett senses the fuel shift. He braces for the boom. Silence. He's okay. Tanks hold. The foam did its job. Swett rolls to park and kills the power. As he exits, Commander David McCampbell, head of the air group, marches over with 6 men trailing. McCampbell's furious, face red. What in blazes are you up to? The showdown unfolds on the deck. 200 sailors as audience. Sir, let me clarify. Clarify? You took a Navy plane without permission. Unauthorized takeoff. You risked the whole group. Torres jumps in. Sir, if you hear us out, I'll lock you both up soon. Shouts erupt from officers. Deckhands pause to stare. Someone calls for guards. Swett attempts to describe the foam, the vacuum explanation, but McCampbell brushes it off. Then Captain Ralph Waller, skipper of the Essex, shows up. Commander McCampbell, report. McCampbell details. Stolen plane, illegal flight, 40 rules broken. Waller faces Swett. Explain why. Swett spills it all. The suction theory, shredded seals, foam fix. The just done successful stop with tanks at half. The deck hushes. Waller eyes the Hellcat. You altered the tanks. Yes, sir. No okay from above. Yes, sir. And you pulled the max speed stop with partial fuel. Yes, sir. Waller approaches the plane. He checks the tank doors. He summons the engineer officer. They review the foam setup. 5 minutes pass. Waller turns. Machinist's mate Swett, you're headed for jail or you're the fleet's savior. We'll see. Commander McCampbell, halt all flights. Radio the Bureau of Aeronautics. Prep 10 more Hellcats for changes. The Bureau of Aeronautics gets back in touch almost right away. Captain Ralph Waller's urgent message reaches Admiral John McCain, who leads Task Force 38. McCain calls for tests without delay. November 14, 1943. On the USS Essex, they run careful trials. 6 Hellcats get the new lining of foam in their fuel tanks. Another 6 keep the usual setup as controls. Every plane goes through 10 arrested stops at different fuel amounts, different speeds for coming in, and different conditions at sea. The flyers testing them really push hard. Rough touches, catches off to the side, full sudden halts. The outcome is clear-cut. Not one blast in the planes with foam. 2 blasts in the regular ones. Even so, the top Navy officials stay doubtful. Rear Admiral Frederick Sherman, in charge of advancing carrier flying, heads out to the Essex himself to question Swett face-to-face. You're claiming that 50 experts from places like MIT overlooked what a young man from an Indiana farm spotted? I'm no expert, sir. That might be exactly why it stood out to me. I wasn't buried in formulas. I was staring at broken pieces. Sherman goes over the trial numbers. He talks to the flyers who ran the tests. He looks closely at how the foam is placed. At last, he asks the key thing. How does it affect real use? Extra weight. How it flies? Upkeep. Swett is prepared with replies. 5 pounds for each tank. Hardly noticeable. Tests in the air show no drop in how it handles. Time to put it in. 45 minutes for one plane. Materials cost $8. Sherman decides on the spot. We're rolling this out across the fleet. All Hellcats out here in the Pacific get the change in 2 weeks. But there's a snag. The Navy lacks enough foam rubber. That stuff is scarce. A lot of it goes into life vests and things to float. Sherman grabs every bit of proper foam anywhere in the Pacific area. Still short. Then an idea comes up. Mattresses. Ships carry hundreds of them. The foam stuffing, if soaked in something to stop fire, might do the job. In 3 days, crew members all over the Pacific Fleet start slicing up mattresses. They bunk on bare metal coils while their mattress foam goes to keep flyers alive. No one gripes. Most know a guy who went down in a tank fire. This change program turns into the quickest update ever for planes in Navy history. By November 30th, 1943, more than 800 Hellcats have tanks lined with foam. Admiral Mitcher ends the hold on ops after dark. December 4th, 1943. The real fight test comes. Task Force 38 works near the Gilbert Islands. Japanese scouts find the carriers. At 20:30 hours, radar spots planes coming in. 12 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers with torpedoes, heading northwest. 4 Hellcats with the foam change launch to cut them off at night. The flyers are Lieutenant Commander Edward O'Hare, Lieutenant Alex Vratsu, Ensign Warren Scone, and Ensign John Ballantyne. O'Hare guides the group in total darkness. No lights on, just directions from radar on the Essex. The Japanese come low over the waves, hoping to slip under detection. At 20:47 hours, O'Hare sees the first Betty, a shadow on darker sea. He dives in, fires from 300 yards. His glowing rounds trace across the bomber's body. The Betty blows up, tumbles into the water. Vratsu takes the second, Scone the third. Tracers light up the night, blasts everywhere. The enemy group scatters, but O'Hare's plane takes hits. A tail gunner on a Betty tags his left wing and tank. Fuel pours out from the hole. The seal works. It slows, then halts the flow. But he's down 50 gallons, barely enough to get back. He turns for the Essex. The ship rolls in rough waves. O'Hare lines up, battles winds and low fuel. Wheels hit firm. Hook snags the wire. The hard stop surges through his tanks, half empty. Without Swett's change, O'Hare would have burned right there, like so many before. Instead, he steps out unharmed. The foam took the jolt. No empty space pulled in air. No seal ripped. No spark. The fight numbers prove it. In December 1943, carriers with night fighters downed 47 Japanese planes, no losses from tank blasts. January 1944, up to 63 downed. Japanese records they capture show the puzzlement. Their reports call American night flyers impossible to damage in fights, able to keep going without breakdowns. Japanese flyers start steering clear of dark attacks on our groups. The big picture shift is huge. No more worry about torpedo runs at night means our carriers push bolder, get close enough to hit Japanese islands, hold spots for days of ops without pulling back when the sun drops. Kill numbers show the change. Before the line tanks, 19-1 for our side in day fights, but nights grounded over blast fears. After, 23-1 daytime, 31-1 at night. Enemy losses climb fast. Ours drop sharp. By February 1944, the lining is normal on every Navy carrier plane. Not just Hellcats, but Corsairs, Avengers, Helldivers too. The foam way spreads to bombers, then transports. A German report grabbed after the war talks about our new thing. The foe has a tank setup that makes their planes almost blast-proof in carrier work. R tries to copy it, flop. American edge in tech and flight safety is a big downside for us. In March 1944, Lieutenant Alex Vratsu, one from that first dark mission, hunts down Swett in the Essex shop bay. Vratsu just hit ace with 19 kills. "Heard you're the one who fixed those tanks," Vratsu says. Swett nods. "Got hit last week. Tank punctured. Made it back low. Hit the deck hard. Walked away fine." Vratsu holds out his hand. "Thanks to you, I'm breathing. Thanks to you, heaps of us are." Swett takes it. Doesn't know what to say. "How many flyers do you figure you kept alive?" Vratsu asks. Swett never added it up. He was only solving what he saw. James Swett's tale shows how fresh ideas often come from surprising spots, from folks who view issues different, not tied to old ways. From November 1943 to August 1945, foam-lined tanks stopped around 394 blasts in carrier planes. That's 394 flyers who got home. 394 homes without a sad knock. 394 who flew again, downed more foes, backed more troops. The Navy built 12,275 F6F Hellcats in the war. Every one made after December 1943 came with foam-lined tanks from Swett's idea. The change went into 10,000 F4U Corsairs, 9,839 TBF Avengers, and 7,040 SB-2C Helldivers. Total planes safeguarded, 39,713. James Swett got no big cheers during the fight. The Navy kept the foam secret, worried Japan might find ways around it. His name stays out of public records till after 1990. He rose to Chief Petty Officer in January 1944, stayed on the Essex till war's end, fixing planes, teaching new hands, slipping in quiet tweaks that kept lives safe. When others asked about the tank fix, he brushed it off. Many helped sort it, he'd say. I just got fortunate. After the war, Swett went home to Terute, started a little car fix shop, wed his old sweetheart Mary Catherine Sullivan, raised 4 kids, never spoke of his Navy days. His children learned of his part only when a Navy researcher found him in 1991. The foam tank idea Swett started is still around. Today's planes, war and regular, use foam pieces in tanks to stop blasts in wrecks. Rules from the Federal Aviation Administration require foam systems to fight blasts in passenger plane tanks. Formula One cars use something like it. Every time you fly on a jet, that safety links back to a 24-year-old wrench turner who wouldn't let good men die needlessly. In 1993, the Navy gave Swett the Legion of Merit, 48 years overdue. The words say, "For outstanding service and ideas in fuel safety that saved hundreds of lives and helped win Navy air wins in the Pacific." Swett went to the Pentagon for it. He was 74. Reporters asked how the late honor felt. "I was only doing my duty. The true heroes flew those runs. I just helped them return." James Swett passed in 2009 at 90. His local paper mentioned Navy time near the end. Most who read it never knew the quiet fixer of their cars had kept hundreds alive. Swett's story teaches it's not about smarts or papers or school. It's seeing clear, daring to move, knowing top ideas sometimes come from those not meant to have them, who won't take no for an answer. The one who shifts history can be the last you'd guess. The fix can be straightforward, and sometimes bending rules is how you keep people breathing. The Bureau of Aeronautics replies in just a few hours. Captain Ralph Waller's urgent report gets straight to Admiral John McCain, the leader of Task Force 38. McCain demands tests right away. November 14th, 1943. Aboard the USS Essex, they carry out precise experiments. 6 Hellcats receive the foam lining inside their fuel tanks. 6 others stay with the normal setup for comparison. Each one completes 10 hard-arrested landings using different amounts of remaining fuel, different speeds on approach, and varying wave conditions. The test flyers really put them through it. Tough impacts, hooks grabbing off center, maximum sudden stops. The findings are undeniable. No explosions at all in the foam-equipped planes. 2 blasts in the ones without it. Still, the senior Navy leaders hold back their full belief. Rear Admiral Frederick Sherman, responsible for developing carrier-based aviation, flies directly to the Essex to speak with Swett in person. "You mean to tell me that 50 specialists from schools like MIT completely missed what a farm kid from Indiana spotted?" "I'm not a specialist, sir. Perhaps that's precisely why it caught my eye. I wasn't lost in calculations. I was examining the actual damaged parts." Sherman reviews the data from the trials. He speaks with the pilots who flew them. He carefully checks the foam placement. In the end, he poses the most important question. What about real-world effects? Added weight, flight characteristics, ongoing care. Swett has all the responses lined up. 5 pounds added per tank, barely worth mentioning. Flight trials reveal no change in handling. Time needed to install, 45 minutes per plane. Cost of supplies, $8. Sherman reaches his verdict immediately. "We are putting this into effect across the entire fleet. Every Hellcat operating in the Pacific receives the update within 2 weeks." Yet a difficulty arises. The Navy simply does not have sufficient foam rubber on hand. Supplies of the material are limited. Much of it is allocated to life preservers and items for staying afloat. Sherman calls for every available amount of appropriate foam throughout the Pacific region. It falls short. Then a suggestion emerges: mattresses. All ships stock hundreds of them. The foam cores, once treated with something to resist flames, could serve perfectly. Within 72 hours, crewmen throughout the Pacific Fleet begin cutting apart mattresses. They rest on plain metal frames while that mattress foam goes toward protecting pilots. No complaints arise. Nearly everyone has lost a friend or knows someone who perished in a fuel tank fire. This update effort becomes the swiftest aircraft modification in the history of the Navy. By November 30th, 1943, more than 800 Hellcats feature foam-lined tanks. Admiral Mitcher removes the restriction on flights after sunset. December 4th, 1943. The true battlefield trial arrives. Task Force 38 is active around the Gilbert Islands. Japanese scouts pinpoint the carriers. At 20:30 hours, radar detects approaching planes. 12 Mitsubishi G4EM Betty torpedo bombers coming from the northwest. 4 Hellcats fitted with the foam modification take off for a nighttime interception. Leading the pilots are Lieutenant Commander Edward O'Hare, Lieutenant Alex Vratsu, Ensign Warren Scone, and Ensign John Ballantyne. O'Hare directs the team through complete blackness. No aircraft lights, only radar guidance from the Essex. The Japanese fly low, skimming the waves to evade detection. At 20:47 hours, O'Hare sights the lead Betty, a faint outline against the darker sea. He plunges downward, firing from 300 yards. His tracer rounds streak across the bomber's frame. The Betty erupts, spinning into the water. Vratsu claims the next one, Scone the third. The darkness fills with glowing tracers and bursts of flame. The enemy group falls into disarray. O'Hare's Hellcat absorbs hits, however. A rear gunner on one Betty strikes his left wing and tank. Fuel gushes from the puncture. The self-seal activates. The flow eases, then ceases. Yet he has lost 50 gallons. Barely enough remains for the return. He heads toward the Essex. The ship pitches in rough seas. O'Hare aligns his path, contending with gusts and dwindling fuel. His wheels strike solidly. The hook secures the wire. The fierce halt surges to his tanks, now half empty. Had Swett's update not been there, O'Hare would have perished on the spot, like countless others before him. Instead, he emerges unscathed. The foam cushioned the surge. No void developed. No liner tore. No ignition occurred. The results from this engagement stand on their own. During December 1943, carrier groups with night fighters destroy 47 Japanese planes, suffering 0 losses from tank explosions. In January 1944, the tally climbs to 63. Captured Japanese files later reveal their bewilderment. Intelligence notes describe American night fighters as nearly impossible to harm in battle and able to continue missions without failures. Japanese aviators soon avoid nighttime assaults on our carrier forces altogether. The broader effect proves immense. With reduced danger from dark-hour torpedo strikes, American carriers advance more daringly. They reach distances suitable for attacking Japanese positions on islands. They sustain locations for extended multi-day efforts without withdrawing to safer areas at dusk. The ratios of victories illustrate the difference. Prior to foam-lined tanks, 19-1 favoring American forces in daylight battles, though nighttime operations halted due to explosion dangers. Afterward, 23-1 in daylight, 31-1 after dark. Japanese aircraft losses surge dramatically. American ones plummet. By February 1944, the foam lining becomes standard across all carrier aircraft in the Navy, not limited to Hellcats, but including Corsairs, Avengers, and Helldivers as well. The foam approach extends to bomber tanks, then to those in transport planes. A post-war captured German Luftwaffe report comments on the American advance. The adversary has created a fuel tank arrangement, rendering their planes almost impervious to blasts during carrier work. Our efforts to duplicate this have not succeeded. The American advantage in technology and aviation protection poses a major strategic drawback for our side. In March 1944, Lieutenant Alex Vratsu, one of the flyers from that initial nighttime combat, searches out Swett in the maintenance area of the Essex. Vratsu has recently achieved ace status with 19 confirmed victories. "I understand you're the man who resolved the tank issues," Vratsu remarks. Swett gives a nod. "Took some hits a week ago, tank damaged. Returned with very little fuel. Landed firmly on deck. Came out fine." Vratsu offers his hand. "Thanks to you, I am still here. Thanks to you, many of us are." Swett accepts the handshake. He struggles for words. "How many pilots do you believe you saved?" Vratsu inquires. Swett has never tallied it. He simply aimed to correct what was broken. The account of James Swett illustrates that breakthroughs frequently emerge from unforeseen sources, from individuals who approach challenges differently, unbound by traditional views. From November 1943 through August 1945, tanks lined with foam averted an estimated 394 explosions in carrier-based planes. That means 394 pilots returned safely. 394 households spared heartbreaking news. 394 aviators who continued flying, claiming more enemy planes, aiding more troops on the ground. The Navy manufactured 12,275 F6F Hellcats over the course of the war. Each one produced, starting in December 1943, included foam-lined tanks inspired by Swett's approach. The update applied to 10,000 F4U Corsairs, 9,839 TBF Avengers, and 7,040 SB-2C Helldivers. Overall aircraft safeguarded, 39,713. Yet James Swett received no widespread acclaim while the conflict raged. The Navy kept the foam lining method classified, concerned that Japan might devise ways to counter it. His name appears in no public records until the 1990s. He advanced to Chief Petty Officer in January 1944. He remained aboard the Essex through the war's conclusion, repairing planes, instructing newer crewmen, and quietly adding enhancements that preserved lives. When fellow sailors inquired about his involvement in the tank resolution, he downplayed it. "Plenty of folks contributed to solving it," he would reply. "I was simply fortunate." Following the war, Swett went back to Terute. He established a modest garage for automobile repairs. He wed his childhood love, Mary Catherine Sullivan. Together they brought up 4 youngsters. He seldom mentioned his time in the Navy. His offspring learned of his contributions only when a historian from the Navy located him in 1991. The foundational foam tank concept pioneered by Swett endures today. Contemporary planes, both military and commercial, employ foam barriers within tanks to avert blasts and accidents. Regulations from the Federal Aviation Administration require systems using foam to suppress explosions in tanks of passenger jets. Cars in Formula One racing utilize comparable methods. Each time you step aboard a commercial flight, you benefit from protection rooted in the efforts of a 24-year-old mechanic who would not stand by while brave men perished unnecessarily. In 1993, the Navy presented Swett with the Legion of Merit, 48 years delayed. The accompanying statement declares, "For exceptionally outstanding conduct and innovations in fuel system protection that directly saved hundreds of lives and greatly advanced naval aviation successes in the Pacific theater." Swett traveled to the Pentagon for the presentation. He was 74 years old. When journalists asked about receiving acknowledgement so late, he responded, "I was merely carrying out my duties. The genuine heroes are those who piloted the missions. I simply ensured they could make it back." James Swett passed away in 2009 at the age of 90. His notice in the local Terre Haute Tribune Star referenced his Navy years near the close. Few who read it realized the unassuming man who had serviced their vehicles for half a century had preserved hundreds of lives. The message from James Swett's experience goes beyond brilliance, qualifications, or schooling. It concerns perceiving issues accurately, possessing the resolve to take action, and recognizing that occasionally, the greatest advancements arise from those not expected to provide solutions, who insist that solutions must exist. At times, the individual who alters the course of events is the one least anticipated. At times, the answer is straightforward, and at times, disregarding regulations is the sole path to preserving lives.